The gaunt mother lying on the bed seems to be just sleeping. However, her face is drained of blood, looking unnaturally pale, almost like a mannequin. I rush to the bed, sit down clinging to my mother. "Mom, Mom!" No matter how loudly I call out to her, my mother doesn't even twitch. She is just breathing, in a vegetative state. "Mom, why? Mom!" I grab her hand, cold as ice, and scream, crying. What a joke, she's just bedridden and there's no inheritance in sight. Seriously. Isn't mother-in-law such a burden? Taking advantage of my mother's unconsciousness, my brother Jake and his wife Sarah reveal their true colors. I will never forgive them. Doing such a thing to my beloved mother. However, an unexpected development awaited me after this. My name is Emily, I'm 21 years old. Living alone while attending a national university focusing on education. I am busy every day with student teaching and studying for exams, all to fulfill my childhood dream of becoming a high school teacher. Combining this with my desire to repay my mother, who raised my brother Jake and me by herself, I spare no effort to achieve my dream. My mother, who has been desperately supporting our family ever since my father passed away when I was young, especially had a hard time with my brother Jake. A few years ago, Jake dropped out of high school and began to live a life of idleness, rarely working and mostly fooling around. Stealing money from my and my mother's wallets was a daily occurrence, and sometimes he even went so far as to secretly sell our household appliances when he needed more. "Hey Jake! Did you take Mom's money again without asking? Give it back." "Huh? You got any proof? You're accusing me without any reason. Show me the evidence." Every time something happened, Jake would violently argue back, demanding show me the evidence. And when we couldn't, he would get so violent that we couldn't handle him. However, even when we actually had evidence, my mother and I were too afraid of Jake's violent outbursts to do anything. One day, when I was fed up with Jake's behavior, the phone rang throughout the house, and my mother, who was cooking dinner in the kitchen, frantically picked up the receiver. "Hello?" I could hear my mother's usual cheerful response. At that time, I was a middle school student doing my homework in my room and didn't pay much attention. However, just a few seconds later, something happened. "Oh my!" Followed by, I'm so sorry. My mother continued to apologize. Feeling a sense of unease, I confirmed that the phone call had ended and rushed to my mother's side. "Mom, what happened?" Then, my mother slowly turned around and said with a pale face, "Jake. He got a married woman pregnant." Jake had gotten involved with a married woman he met while out fooling around. That woman was Sarah, who is now Jake's wife. From that point on, hellish days began. Although Sarah's ex-husband demanded alimony, Jake wasn't working, so all the financial responsibilities fell on my mother's shoulders. We were forced to live even more frugally than before. Furthermore, the eyes of our neighbors became even harsher. Rumors spread quickly, and my mother and I were bad-mouthed every day. "That girl, the one in the rumors. Just like her brother, isn't she also a playgirl? Is there something wrong with her mother's parenting? Being a single parent must be really tough." At school, and at work, my mom, were faced with curious eyes every day. Unable to talk back, we just had to endure the behind-the-back talks. Those days were nothing short of hell. Weeks later, my mom and I learned through a lawyer that Sarah and her ex-husband had divorced. But after that, it seemed like my brother had become defiant. He started bringing Sarah home frequently. Moreover, despite being pregnant, Sarah and my brother drank a lot of alcohol and even smoked. "My son, don't you think it's harmful for Sarah since she's pregnant?" My mother always worried like that, but they never listened to her advice. In the end, Sarah had a miscarriage, and the judgment from those around us grew even harsher. I heard their son forced that woman to have an abortion. I heard he was violent, that she miscarried because he hit her in the wrong place. Baseless rumors spread more and more. Even though my mom and I hadn't done anything wrong, I wondered why we had to feel so miserable. In the end, unable to bear the judgment from the neighbors, my mom and I decided to move back to her hometown. But my brother didn't come with us. "I'm gonna marry Sarah. You guys, once I can't squeeze any more money out of you, you're useless to me." Spitting out those words, my brother cut off all ties with us. Honestly, I was nervous that my brother might cause trouble even after we moved, so when we finally got away from him, my mom and I cried tears of joy. From that point on, my relationship with my brother was almost like a complete estrangement. Life in the new place was still tight financially, but my mom and I lived quietly, just the two of us. When I became a high school student, I decided to work right after graduation and submitted my career survey accordingly. Having seen my mom's struggles up close, I wanted to give her an easier life as soon as possible. Of course, without going to college, I wouldn't be able to fulfill my dream of becoming a high school English teacher. But at that time, that seemed like a minor issue to me. I thought my decision to work right away would surely make my mom happy. But when she saw my career survey, she looked serious and said, "Emily, go to college. You've always said you wanted to be an English teacher. I want you to go to college and fulfill your dream. Don't worry about the money, children shouldn't have to worry about that." With those words, she strongly encouraged me. "Mom, thank you." After that, I aimed for a local state university with affordable tuition and studied hard every day. And in the fall, thanks to my efforts, I was able to get into my first choice university. However, the university I got into was far from home, and it took more than an hour one way. It was time-consuming and costly, but we couldn't afford for me to live alone. Above all, I didn't want my mom to be lonely if I left home. Seeing my concern, my mom said, "You know, the time you have to yourself is precious, and you only get it while you're a student, so make sure you use it wisely." Encouraged by her, I've been living in an apartment near the university since I enrolled. I'm deeply grateful to my mom for letting me go to college and even supporting me to live on my own. I'm determined to fulfill my dream as soon as possible and give my mom an easier life. With that strong feeling in my heart, I've been diligently studying every day. Then one day, after the usual university lectures, I came home and saw a missed call from my mom on my phone. "Hello, Mom? I just got home. What's up?" I answered the phone while putting down my bag. "Oh, Emily? I'm sorry to call you out of the blue. There's something I need to talk to you about." Her tone was lower than usual, and I instinctively braced myself. "Yeah. What's up?" After a pause, she slowly said, "I'm going to start living with your brother, with Jake." "What?" I couldn't comprehend what she was saying and fell silent. "Actually, I heard from Jake a little while ago. He's living with Sarah now, in the same state as us. They asked me if I wanted to move in and live with them," she said. "Wait a minute. Mom, you're kidding, right? After all the painful things those two have put us through." I didn't realize it, but I had raised my voice in my emotional state. "It's not that I've forgotten, but Jake says he's sorry. He wants to make amends for what happened back then," she explained. Now, of all times, there's definitely something fishy going on. "Don't worry about me, I'll be fine. Besides, I want to give Jake one more chance to make things right. Sarah actually regretted having a miscarriage with Jake's child and said she's changed her heart. But still, there's no need to live together. If only Jake would just stay out of our lives." Then, with a determined voice, my mother said, "I haven't told Emily this, but the truth is, I've been unwell. Jake happened to see me visiting your uncle's hospital, and he was concerned, so he suggested we live together." "What? Unwell? Going to the hospital?" I had no idea that my mother was in poor health, and I hadn't noticed any changes. Even though we lived apart, we made sure to see each other at least once a month. "Is it a serious illness?" "No. It's probably just my age," she said with a slight chuckle, trying to make light of the situation. I felt so worthless for wanting to repay my mother for everything she's done, yet not noticing any changes in her health. Moreover, even my uncle, a doctor at a university hospital, had kept it from me. They probably thought it would be a burden to me, a student. I was so shocked that I couldn't rely on them, and I couldn't speak. If my mother's health was indeed deteriorating, living alone was indeed worrisome. And once my mother has made up her mind, she won't change it. No matter what I said, it probably wouldn't change her mind. I gave up halfway and sighed softly. "All right. But you have to promise to consult with me immediately if anything happens. You have to." "Yes. I promise." And so, the living arrangement with my mother, Jake, and Sarah began. It had been about a month since my mother, Jake, and Sarah started living together. I was in the middle of a busy semester at university, spending my entire day studying. Additionally, several employees at my part-time job had quit, so I was extremely busy juggling school and work. I hadn't met Jake and Sarah yet. I wanted to meet them before they started living with my mother, but seeing how busy I was, my mother insisted, "Don't push yourself." She frequently contacted me, telling me how kind Jake and Sarah had become. Jake has really changed. He even brought me a cake on his way home from work the other day. Sarah is really good at household chores. She insists that I don't have to do anything. I feel like I'm taking advantage of them. Every time I heard my mother's happy voice, I felt relieved. I still couldn't forgive my brother, Jake. But no matter what kind of person he was still her child. Maybe she's just happy to rebuild her relationship with her son after a falling out. If my mother is happy, then that's all that matters, I thought, starting to accept their living arrangement. However, an incident occurred after 3 months had passed. I finally found a break in my studies and was able to make time for just one day. I contacted my mother, and she suggested, "Let's have lunch at that cafe we used to go to all the time." I was looking forward to that day. But on the day of our meeting, something unexpected happened. I arrived at the cafe for our meetup and looked for my mother, who had arrived earlier. I scanned the interior of the cafe, but couldn't find anyone who looked like her. Then, I saw a woman waving at me from a seat in the back of the cafe. Mom. I was about to wave back when I froze. The mother sitting there was shockingly thinner than she had been just 3 months ago. What happened, Mom? I was so shocked that I forgot to sit down. Her shoulders were noticeably narrower, and her cheeks were hollow. "Long time no see, Emily. How've you been?" "Never mind about me. What happened to you? You've lost so much weight. Did Jake and Sarah do something to you?" I grabbed my mother's shoulder and questioned her. Suddenly grasping her shoulder, I was shocked at how thin it was, worried it might just break. Actually, a little while ago, Jake and Sarah's attitudes started changing. At first, they just pushed the household chores onto me, but gradually, they began reducing the amount of food they gave me. I've been moving around without eating, so I've lost a bit of weight, my mother said with a downcast smile. Seeing my mother's drastically changed appearance, sadness welled up inside me. But even more than that, anger and hatred towards my brother and his wife surged within me. I couldn't forgive them. Is Jake trying to steal our mom's happiness again? "Mom, let's go see Jake and Sarah right now. I'll talk to them directly. Why don't you come live with me? I'll work more hours, so don't worry about anything." My mother gently placed her index finger on my mouth, stopping my emotional outburst. "Emily, it's okay. I'm all right, so I just need you to wait another week," she said in an unusually calm tone, which made me involuntarily close my mouth. In the end, I couldn't meet with Jake and Sarah that day. Yet, the clear anger towards them inside me did not subside. I returned home alone, and without turning on the light in my room, I collapsed onto my bed and broke down in tears. Why? Why can't I ever be of any help to Mom? Surely my mom is worried about me because I'm a student and can't move as freely as I'd like. But more than anything, I was just furious with myself for being so powerless and not being able to help my mom. Exactly 1 week later, something happened. I returned home from university as usual, and was about to start preparing dinner when I received a call from an unknown number. "Hello. Emily, is that you?" It was my uncle's voice. "Uncle? Is this number? Are you calling from a hospital?" Ignoring my question, my uncle said in a quiet voice. "Stay calm and listen to me. Your mom, she's been in a traffic accident." The moment I heard those words, I felt as if time had stopped. "Mom, in an accident? Uncle, you're kidding, right?" I tried to play it off with a joking tone. But my voice was unmistakably shaking. "Actually, today was your mom's day to go to the hospital. She must have been feeling unwell. She stumbled onto a crosswalk at a red light. She's been diagnosed with malnutrition recently, and that must have affected her. Then a car hit her. Fortunately, her life is not in danger, but she hasn't regained consciousness." "No, that can't be." "Anyway, she's now at my university hospital. She might not wake up again. You should be prepared." With trembling hands, I hung up the phone. Grabbing my bag that had fallen on the floor, I rushed out of the house. "Mom, please be okay." "Uncle! How's Mom?" When I arrived at the hospital, my uncle, who was waiting at the entrance, immediately took me to her room. My emaciated mother was lying on the bed, seemingly just asleep. But her face was pale, as if drained of blood, looking almost like a mannequin. I rushed to the bed, sat down, and clung to her. "Mom, Mom!" No matter how loudly I called out to her, she didn't move a muscle. She was in a vegetative state, only breathing. "Mom, why? Mom!" Holding my mother's ice-cold hand, I cried and screamed. Then, I heard the sound of the hospital room door sliding open and footsteps entering the room. At the same time, I heard two familiar voices that reached my ears. "What's this? Just a bedridden patient and no inheritance. Now she's just a burden." Really though? I was hoping the inheritance would come through quickly. "Mother-in-law, isn't this too much trouble?" The voices I heard right behind me belonged to my brother, Jake, and his wife, Sarah. I recognized them immediately, without even having to turn around. I had heard their voices more than enough when I lived with my brother. It was the voice of my brother, who used to steal money from me and our mom and then go on a rampage. It was the voice of Sarah, who didn't care about me and my mom at all, made a baby with my brother, and even had the nerve to move into our house. I could never forget. I was visiting Uncle at the hospital, and I heard that Mom's not gonna last much longer. I was nice to her, thinking the inheritance was coming, and now she's in a vegetative state. She's repaying kindness with ingratitude. I thought mother-in-law had hidden my father-in-law's inheritance, so I was excited thinking a big sum might come our way. What a letdown. Really, we were just wasting our kindness. Even Uncle couldn't take it anymore and shouted, "Hey! Show some respect." Inheritance. We don't need to be talking about that right now. And to begin with, Mom started getting shaky because you guys skipped her meals. She might have had an accident because of that. You deceived Mom out of greed for the inheritance. When I turned around, there were Jake, who seemed a bit aged, and Sarah, with her flashy curly hair and a short skirt. "I'm sorry, Mom. I didn't notice anything." I glared sharply at my brother and his wife, who were laughing scornfully. "Everything is a mess because of you, always has been, always will be. Never show your faces to us again." My brother and his wife shuddered as I yelled at them with a ferocious look. I got it. There's no point in staying here with Mom anymore, it's just costing money. We were after the inheritance from the start. If there's no money coming in, there's no point in living with her." In his panic, Jake spoke in an unusually loud voice. "Even before we got married, I lived with Mom and Emily to steal their money. Mom didn't notice, naive as she is. I've been stealing money from Mom's purse even now. And I've sold almost all of her expensive-looking jewelry, but she hasn't noticed a thing. By the way, Emily, you left your mom alone, too. Aren't you just as guilty? Don't push everything onto us." In front of our silent mother, Jake and Sarah were laughing scornfully. I was so frustrated, I couldn't hold back my tears. And then, at that moment. "Ha, you finally said it." "What?" Jake, Sarah, and I all spoke at the same time. On the bed, my mother was sitting up with her eyes wide open. "Mom!" "What?" "I'm sorry, Emily. You don't have to cry anymore. You did well." My mother smiled energetically and exchanged glances with Uncle. "What do you mean? Mom, weren't you in a car accident and unconscious?" "Actually, this was all a plan that your uncle and I came up with." Then, Uncle, who had been silent until now, spoke up. "Sorry, Emily. About 3 months ago, Jake contacted me after he happened to see Mom going to the hospital. He was asking all sorts of strange questions like, is Mom not gonna last much longer? How much of the inheritance will go to the son? I knew something was up, so I talked to your mom right away." Mom nodded in agreement to Uncle's words. "Right after Jake talked to me, he suggested we live together. I knew right away he was after my inheritance, so I asked your uncle to pretend to be on Jake's side and find out what he was planning." The sudden turn of events left me stunned, my mouth hanging open. While Jake and Sarah were furious, realizing they had been tricked. "Huh. You were in touch with Mom? You tricked me. You guys are the worst. You deceived both me and Jake, didn't you? Cowards." As my brother and his wife turned beet red and screamed their heads off, Mom shouted back. "Who do you think deceived whom here?" Even though Mom had never raised her voice, no matter what mischief my brother got up to in the past. This time she yelled louder than anyone else there. In the past, I turned a blind eye to your wrongdoings because I didn't want to ruin your future when you were young. But I was too lenient. You haven't learned your lesson, coming back here to disrupt mine and Emily's lives again. This time, you will face the consequences. At her icy voice, my brother and his wife turned pale. Punishment? Yes. Just now, you admitted to stealing money from Emily and me, and not just recently. You even bragged about stealing and selling our jewelry. I'm sorry, but I was aware of everything. I recorded our conversation just now. Mom took out a voice recorder she had hidden near the bed. And you two are both unemployed, aren't you? Pretending to go to work, but actually goofing off every day. I heard you racked up a huge debt, betting on receiving a big inheritance from me. But you didn't just steal from Emily and me. Surely, there aren't any other crimes the police should know about, are there? At that, my brother and his wife suddenly started trembling. Please, forgive us. In the end, we didn't get any of Mom's inheritance. We won't come near you or Emily ever again. So please, don't report this to the police. My brother was in a panic, clinging to Mom. His bravado from before was completely gone. From the looks of it, my brother and his wife were involved in other activities they didn't want the police to know about. However, Mom firmly told them. No, I gave you a chance to change your ways once before, and you betrayed that. The price you pay this time will be steep. Mom spoke coldly. Oh, and Jake, remember how you used to demand, show me the evidence, while making a big fuss? Well, this time, I've prepared everything perfectly. I'll be submitting this voice recorder to the proper authorities. Thanks for the advice, it came in handy after all these years. My brother and his wife collapsed to their knees. No way! Ignoring my brother and his wife clinging to her, Mom gave Emily and me a triumphant smile and exchanged eye contact with our uncle. That night, I had dinner with Mom at our uncle's house. Why didn't you tell me about the plan? Now that I had finally calmed down and grasped the situation, I asked Mom and Uncle. My eyes were still swollen from crying so much. I'm sorry for surprising you. But to deceive the enemy, one must first deceive their friends. While it's true that Jake was starving us, I also ate as little as possible to make our act more convincing. I'm quite the actress, aren't I? Mom laughed proudly, looking stronger than ever. But you were really going to the hospital, right? Is your health, your illness okay? Jake said that you didn't have much longer to live. Is that true? As I asked, teary-eyed again, Mom and Uncle looked at each other and burst into laughter. Oh dear, the hospital I was going to was the orthopedic department at the university hospital. I had terrible back pain, and my brother recommended a good doctor there. After about a month of visits, I was completely healed. Jake only saw his sister going into the hospital, so he didn't know which department she was visiting. As for saying she didn't have long to live, we did tell a little white lie. Recently, we've had her come to the hospital for the sake of camouflage and information exchange. Hearing their nonchalant answers, all the tension left my body. Mom wasn't sick. She would be with us for a long time to come. I'm so relieved. I haven't been able to repay you for everything yet, Mom. Relieved, I broke down and started crying again. Today, my tear ducts seemed to be on overdrive. I'm sorry for putting you through this, Emily. But all I want is for you to be happy and healthy. Mom hugged me tenderly as I cried like a child. Later on, Mom and Uncle submitted the voice recorder to the police. Since they had already consulted a lawyer, it seemed that we were going to get all of the stolen money and the money from the sold jewelry back from my brother and his wife. Of course, we made them pay everything in one lump sum. By the way, my brother and his wife, who had quit their jobs and were living off a huge debt while waiting for an inheritance, would now be chased for repayments on that debt as well. Moreover, it turned out they had been involved in setting up honey traps and fraudulent schemes. Once they became targets of a police investigation, they were quickly caught. Since then, I have no idea what kind of life my brother and his wife have been leading. A few months later, as the weather gradually warmed up, I was enjoying my peaceful days when I got a call from Mom. Emily, after the university graduation ceremony next week, do you want to go out to eat with Uncle and the three of us? I'm happy, but is it really okay? It's fine. He said he wants to celebrate with us. After all, Emily, you're going to be a high school teacher starting this fall, Something you've always wanted. Yeah. I'm happy, thank you. And so, once again, happy everyday life returned to us. From now on, I intend to slowly repay the favor, supporting each other with my mother.